Hey, Justice,
Yep.
what do you call a guitar player that only knows 2 chords?
I don't know what.
A music critic.
It's a pretty good one.
Yeah.
I like it.
So I'm going to take a quick second here. I don't know how this works usually because I'm not on most of the episodes, but I wanted to thank our sponsors, Shock Rock, Vagabond Audio, Bullet Cable, Get Off My Case, and SE Electronics. So now that that's out of the way, we can start the episode. And why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Because I have no plan for this episode.
Oh, yeah. No, that's all good. So I'm Justus Gash. I run a company that is now called Fuzz Imp. In some places called Fuzz Imp Effects on Facebook and a few other places, but it used to be called Fuzz Imp, all one word, effects. And I've been really stoked on pedals for the last, I don't know, let's say a couple of years or so, like 2 years.
Well, how'd you get into pedals?
I was really into them in my teenage years, and then I kind of went digital for a while, and then my friend Shock Rock started telling me about how awesome pedals were again. That's basically what happened. Must
be super cool.
Yeah.
Or super lame.
No, it's pretty cool, and he has a lot of pedals, and he knows a lot about pedals. So yeah, that's what happened. We started talking, and then I started accumulating pedals. And I think at first I was really hesitant to get into fuzz. I think I went through a stage in my teenage years where I tried a lot of different fuzzes and didn't really, I never quite got the sound I was after, but I really I had like 10 different fuzz pedals when I was younger. But yeah, something about it. Once I started getting good ones, I started getting really into it. And that was about, I would say about 2 years ago. So, and then I started doing the YouTube thing. I was basically trying to figure out, I was trying to balance a bunch of different things. I was going to be a solo artist. I was going to do sync licensing music. I was thinking about going that route. I was doing YouTube gear demos. And I was just trying to pick a path, and I ended up deciding to just stick to pedal demos. And yeah, it kind of went from there. Did a ton of videos last year, acquired a lot of fuzz pedals, and tried a bunch. And then January 1st of 2021, I built my first kit, and then I started building pedals, and now here we are.
Yeah, so it has not been that long as far as company going wise, but you have put out a lot of stuff, like just in general, just like you went balls in.
Yeah, I think what I kind of what happened that maybe was the driving factor there is, so right at the tail end of December, I had found out that I had to move out of my current situation, and I was stressing it pretty hard because I was going to go from splitting a place with a roommate that was really affordable to having to pay for my own apartment, and I had not a lot in the work. So basically, I started the company to help make up the difference in rent that I needed to cover. So I had a lot of motivation to start selling right away.
Yeah, I mean, when you first started, it was like just boom, 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 out the door, just constant. Like,
yeah,
I mean, you really you just went all in right at the beginning.
Yeah, I think it was, yeah, I think
risky.
It was risky, and I can't believe more didn't fail in the field than did, because I think the very first pedal I sold was a Megalith clone with a pedal PCB board, and that one had like an issue when the guy got it, because I really didn't know what I was doing. And so I learned from that, like, okay, you really have to test really extensively and bang stuff around and make sure it's going to survive shipping.
Yeah, shake it like a paint shaker
Yeah.
almost. Yeah, just bam, bam, bam on the table. Just make sure
Anything,
everything's
yeah.
solid. Yeah.
So yeah, I learned that lesson pretty quick. But what I did really early on, I had kind of an idea for a pedal. There's what became the monocle, which has been, I have that circuit kind of integrated in a couple things now, but it was a fuzz factory, but you had the one external knob with the internal trim pots. I had been talking to Lucky from Demonic Machines about doing something with that. And so I just bought the board rights. I had them design the board. And I bought that like in the first week of building pedals. And then it took a couple weeks to get that off the ground, but I got it going. And then right around that same time, Jesse from Noise Therapy reached out and was like, hey, you're starting to do stuff. What do you need help with? And I really needed a foot switch PCB. And he helped me out with what is now, there's a bunch of different designs, but the one knob fuzz that I do a lot of different versions of. It was originally called the Fuzz Imp 2, and it had one toggle, which was the bass mode. And then I had another version of it designed that became the V2 and V3. I still do the V3. And then I did the Bonfire and the Praise the Sun and the BFK. And all those are all based on the old Color Sound one knob fuzz. It's basically one knob fuzz factory.
Nice.
That's a good circuit.
Yeah. So yeah, normally we have a topic that we go over in these episodes, but I was so unprepared for this that you are our topic today. So you get a special episode, I guess, because
yeah,
ball's in your court. But
Brandon, what was the first fuzz that you got that was actually good? So
first fuzz pedal that I bought that was actually good,
or that you made, both can be answered.
Well, actually, you know what? Yeah, that's actually how I got into building pedals, was actually because of a fuzz. It was the Electro-Harmonix Satisfaction fuzz. I bought that fuzz and it had a dead battery in it, like a dying battery. And when it finally died, I put a new battery in and it did not sound good anymore. Like I just could not stand like the regular sound of it. And I was like, I had to build a dead battery simulator. That was the first thing I ever built, was a dead battery simulator to make the Satisfaction sound good. And that's actually led me down the road to finally building the green fuzz, which was really my first big, release pedal. So which I think the Satisfaction fuzz is actually, funny enough, it's not based off the tone from the Satisfaction song. It's actually based off a Jordan Boss tone.
Oh, okay.
Thing. Yeah. So that circuit is just a Jordan Boss tone without the with a different capacitor and diodes, which that's probably super boring. So I'm not going to go into details on that stuff because this is not a circuit show.
Oh, I was going to say we can get super granular because I talk about
super granular in this, but no, this is
it's all about the celebration of fuzz.
It's where jaded gear junkies find their next fix. So let's talk about something. What's the pedal lately? Like, what pedal have you been jonesing over lately? Like,
oh man, that I've seen. Man, there's a good few out there. There's something on the horizon. I want to see more about it. So I've heard that Dirge Electronics has done some cool stuff lately, and they have a Spruce Dirge collab coming in like a couple weeks.
Huh.
And I haven't seen what it's actually gonna be yet. They just showed like a gut shot. But the last one they did, I can't remember who the company was. I'm in a bunch of different Discord groups, and they had a recent collab that they did that was everyone was really raving about. I think if I was to own anything right now that's like kind of common-ish, I would really like to have a Black Bliss factory, a Black Bliss factory. If I was just going to go out and That and in the link I sent you, that Red Army. Oh, I wonder if that sold. It might have sold today.
I saw one. You know what? Somebody relisted it on Reverb
Did they?
last night.
Oh,
Yeah, I
okay.
saw it last night. I was like just perusing the stuff, and it was relisted. Same price, $850.
Real? Is it buy it now on Reverb?
I think
Oh
so.
man, no way. Oh no, they have it for 14.
Oh,
Oh no, this is an old. Oh, this is an old listing. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
I was so what we're talking about. If are they going to see? They're not going to see the video, are they?
Yeah, they'll see this part of the whole thing, which
Okay.
is funny. So we'll just talk about this real quick. So Justus and me have this obsession with pedals, and it's so strong that in the middle of our podcast, Justus has to go online to look at this pedal.
Yeah. So the Red Army Overdrive, if you haven't seen there's actually a really good JHS episode that I forgot. He shows his. I couldn't remember if he had, knowing his love for Sovtek. So pre-Sovtek, they made the first Russian muff, and it was a little bit different circuit, and it was the coolest art that they did, I think, in my opinion. And so they're really cool looking. They're super rare. If you have one with the box, there's probably, I don't know, you could correct me, but I would guess there's less than like 20 that'll ever be for sale that still have the box, like in the world, because power collectors will trade amongst themselves and not put them out to the public, is what I would think is the factor there.
I actually have no idea. There's so many different renditions of the muff out there that it's crazy. Like I've always wanted a violet muff, but I'm never going to buy one because they're just too expensive for me. Like I don't need something like that in my collection. Like I like to collect pedals, but I want them to be something that I'm actually going to play. If I ever bought one like that, I'd probably play it like at home once or something. I'd never, I'd never do anything with it. So it's just not a collector's piece for me.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about with you and some others. It's like I have a small list of stuff that I basically would just buy and put in a case or in a shelf and just leave it there for the next 10 years, because I know there's going to come a time, just like what happened with a bunch of other pedals, like how we used to be able to buy Black Russians for $50 or less. Like you bought yours for 30, the one I got from
There's just a couple of them. Yeah, there's just they were so cheap back in the day, and now it's just like blown up.
$200 for. I remember there was this time when I got the one from you, like they were selling consistently on Reverb for like 220, and that was the highest I had ever seen. And then they went back down because like economy and timing going up and down. So I think they're floating right around like 180 to 220, depending on condition and if it has the box and stuff. But yeah, so that's the thing. I don't want to regret that I could have bought a few of them when they were like within reach. And it's hard to gauge what's going to be that thing. So the reason I like those is because I actually like the sound. So in addition to being a cool collector piece, it actually would be something I would play. And I just want a whole Sovtek collection, because that's pretty much the only fuzz that I think will retain its collectability moving forward consistently, because it's the big name. Like there's a lot of better pedals, arguably. Like you can go out and spend.
I mean, you can argue that about all day about every pedal. I mean, there's some pedals out there that are just straight up garbage, and then there's everything else. I mean, everything can be used for something. I mean, speaking of, our sponsors, one of them is also Metaverse, which he sent us the air trash.
Oh,
which, that pedal is hot garbage. I mean, it really is. And in a good way, though. Like, I don't know if you've ever played one, but like they sound awful. Everything you do on it sounds awful. Like there's no redeeming factors to that sound, except it's so bad that you can use it in different ways and it's still good. Whereas like there's some pedals that are just hot garbage and you should just throw them in the trash, which I've done. I didn't even return some of them. I'll throw them in the trash. And now I regret throwing it away because it was so bad that I want to show it to people.
Yeah. Oh man, bad pedals. But to circle back for a second, when you were talking air trash, it reminded me, one of my things that I want to have in the collection is the Geiger counter, because
Oh,
it's technically,
absolutely.
it's a pedal that sounds bad, but it's good because it sounds bad.
But it can sound good. That's the thing.
It can,
That one
yeah.
you can dial in. You could dial that one in to sound great. But the Air Trash, I don't think there's anything on it that sounds good. Like it sounds so bad it's good kind of thing, like a B movie.
Isn't that based on a PT 2399 or something? Isn't
It
that a
sure
delay
is.
chip?
Yeah. It's a delay chip, but I'm guessing it's somewhere close to that
The Seymour?
Seymour, something like that.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, is that I had that prototype of yours that was based off that, and it was capable of some really cool sounds. But
That
yeah,
one definitely had like a doubling effect though, more than more than like just trashy sounding, and it was loud.
yeah, I like loud pedals.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Yeah, so the Red Army was something that popped up on my radar again. I remember hearing about it, its existence. I didn't even know about it till a little bit ago. And then Jay just had an episode where he's playing one and talking about it. And then I've only ever seen a couple, like you can look on Reverb sold listings. They've only sold a couple times. They're usually years back. But yeah, rare stuff is cool. But if you want good sounding pedals, I mean, it's not that hard. There's a lot of good ones out there now.
I mean, you can get $20 pedals that sound amazing. It's
Yep.
not always about how good it sounds. Sometimes it really is the aesthetic also.
Yeah, and something that you know, and me, is like the look is what sells it now. And I've even made the comment to people, it's like, after your collection has reached a certain point, it doesn't matter what the pedal sounds like, because if it's expensive, it better sound good. And so
Yeah,
now
but
it's
I
a
mean,
matter of what
you
looks
can go
cool.
into that even further, and you can say like, yes, I want a pedal that sounds good. Yes, I want a pedal that looks good. But what if it was something else? What if it's just something beyond that? Like Chibson released that one pedal, the Placebo, right? It doesn't do
Right.
anything. It's got knobs. It looks great, but it's not the aesthetic that you're buying, and it's not the sound that you're buying. You're buying something completely different. That's literally just like a show thing. Like I bought this just to show it off. That's like buying $100 app because you can.
Right. No, exactly. That's kind of what I was getting at with some of my, like I wanted a life pedal, right? Like I would talk about it all the time. And I've had different, like some clone stuff that's really similar. And then I eventually owned one, and I owned it for all of a weekend, but it was like a major monument for me because I
I
had always
remember
said,
that. Yeah. And you know what's funny? Last week I finally got to play the original life pedal, the big box,
yeah,
the knobs on the front. And I was like, there was so much hype about this pedal. It like got me all pumped up to play it. I finally played it. I was like, oh, okay.
yeah,
I mean,
it's not bad.
it's not bad. It was so hyped up. I was thinking this is going to sound amazing. And it just kind of sounded like a bunch of other stuff, which is great. I mean, it's all great stuff. I was thinking it was going to be something like life changing, but it wasn't.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with that one, especially when I had it, is that you really have to dime almost everything to, like, you have to set it pretty extreme to really get its sound it's known for.
Except for the octave. The octave.
Except for the octave,
It's like
you have
on
to
or
dial
off.
it in just right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I felt like the way they implemented the blend, I've seen a lot of clones where they tried, like they might have even traced it or something, but I don't think anybody's quite got it as good, especially because I had a V2. The way the octave was implemented on the V2 was really good. I can't remember. Does the original have the expression jack? I can't remember.
I don't remember. I wasn't playing with it like that. I just literally
No,
straight into the
I never did. I never did either. But apparently, one or both versions has expression jacks. So you can blend in the octave as you're playing, which would be kind of cool.
The octave on this one, I mean, you could go between 0 and 1 and it was like full blast. Like there was no blend.
I wonder if the diodes got out of spec or something, because I think it's a pair
The
of
octave was great.
diodes.
I mean, it
Yeah.
sounded it sounded great, and it's the Shin-E, I think, on that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
super
and it
fuzzy. Yeah,
sounded awesome. Like I loved the sound of it.
FY6. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
FY6. Yeah,
and
or something
I
like
love
that.
the sound of it, but the whole pedal in general, I thought was gonna wow me a little more. Like the rat circuit in it was super bright, and there was no way to like tame it, and it like the the volume was more like a filter than the actual filter knob on the one I tried.
Yeah,
I was just like, oh, well, I mean, yay.
yeah. No, I think what I realized for me lately, because tastes change over time. Because I used to be all about the big muffs. Like I love my Russians. I had a bunch of different ones at NYCs, and then a few reissues and a bunch of modded stuff. Like I had a Vero Triangle from Chris Ray and a couple other things that were pretty cool. Super Collider. I had a Super Collider spec. Um, but what I realized
Real
over
quick,
time.
unpopular opinion on big muffs. I like the tone wicker.
Oh no, me too. That's the
Yeah.
best one, hands down.
That's my favorite one, but I've heard so much hate on that pedal, and I don't know why.
That's why all mine have tone bypass switches. The few that I've done. Speaking of which, the sender pedal that is not out yet is based on. It started its life as a black Russian board with a tone bypass, and it's a two knob pedal. It's coming out. I had the beta group um, that I'm working with, and it has cool art that's going to be printed really soon. But it's a two knob pedal, but the board is a muff board, and then I tweaked the diodes and made a bunch of mods, so it's in between a muff and a bender because that was the only sound I could get out of it that I liked. But yeah, the tone wicker is great because with the tone out of a big muff, it gets really big and open and raw sounding.
Yeah, but
Which I think,
the tone wicker switch, the wicker switch, it
yeah,
actually changes to mid hump it, if I remember correctly. It changes the high frequencies on it. So it doesn't
yeah.
actually cut the tone knob out.
Oh yeah. That's
Changes
right.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
I think it changes a cap
also
or something. Yeah.
no, it's a huge change because it uses it uses CMOS switching, but it's basically just using like for a quad bypass rather than just a single pull, single throw. It actually is using like a chip to do 4 different things to switch the
Oh,
whole part of the circuit out.
oh wow. I need to look at that
Yeah,
schematic again.
yeah.
But yeah.
Look at the tone wicker schematic, because that one is actually, it changes a whole big part of the circuit. So kind
But
of
I
like
think that's
the
yeah.
DS2. The DS2, if you look at the schematic, it's like it says DS1 and DS2 and turbo on it, but the DS1 part of the circuit is not a DS1 because there's no chips in that pedal, which I
Yeah.
thought was really interesting. Like a lot of JFETs,
Oh,
but
you know what changed my mind? It was a big thing, and we might have talked about this. Is I when I was a younger player, you think of Boss pedals as like good but not great. Like they do the thing. Like if it's a delay, it's a delay. If it's a reverb, it's a reverb. But
I just
I
always
always
thought of them as professional pedals.
exactly, yeah. No,
Yeah.
they're touring pedals because you can run over them with your car and they'll still work, more or less. So what I learned about Boss as I got into building pedals, and I'm sure you noticed this too, is they had really advanced circuit design for the time. Like they were really well engineered.
Yeah, I think some of their stuff is still really advanced. Like if you look at the
Yeah.
DS3, the filtering that goes into the delay lines of that is ridiculous. Like
Yeah.
all their pedals, like if you look at the schematics, it's like 10 times harder than you would think it would be. But yeah.
So yeah, we're in the boutique builder world, right? And we get stuff that's well, I buy all my designs just so people know, because that's the part of the reason I was able to grow so fast, because I knew what I wanted, and I have a pretty good understanding now of how circuits work, which I didn't for a long time. I remember one time I was talking to you about, I didn't know the difference between diodes and transistors. You're talking about germanium and something, and I didn't even know the difference between diodes and transistors, which is really funny to me now. But
Well, you can use a transistor as a diode, you know.
You can,
So,
and
but,
MOSFETs.
Yeah.
But yeah. So yeah, so learn. So like we'll design stuff, and it like you can put a lot of thought into it and make something pretty cool. And then you pull up a schematic of an old Boss pedal that was made 50 years ago, basically now, 40 years ago, and you're like, this is already so much more advanced than like most of what's out there right now. And
Which,
people,
I don't know if you've looked at the inside of the new Wazacraft tone bender, but that is the most advanced tone bender I have ever seen. There are more ICs in there
I'm gonna
than
look it
there
up
are
later.
other parts. It's ridiculous, which I'm sure most of that is just the on-off switching system that they used on there. Because I mean, tone
Yeah,
bender is a pretty simple circuit all in all, but I mean, you can see, and it's actually really cool looking because they have the old germanium transistors in there and stuff, but then you have all like the, you know,
like
the
little
CMOS switching
SMT,
and stuff.
yeah, and
Yeah.
all kinds of little like,
The
yeah.
little
Now they're,
SMD parts, but then you have the old style germanium transistors in there. Just
yep,
interesting.
yeah, and so that's been cool to see. I mean, Boss is kind of having another. They've never not gone out of style, but at least in the pedal circles, we tend to trend towards stuff that looks a little cooler and is like got some neat features or something. But I don't think Boss will ever lose relevance. But just like I said, as the more I learned about pedals, the more I came to appreciate like even a DS1, which was when when we were coming up, it was like a $20 distortion pedal.
I can't believe how much they've gone up in price just for regular old DS1s.
Yeah, isn't it almost $60 now for a brand new one?
I think so, something like that.
It's like 50,
bucks.
55, $60.
But it's funny because I see a lot of them, you know, like even the brand new ones, people are trying to get 75, $80 for the ones that you can buy brand new. It's just weird.
Yeah, that is weird. Um, I like the DS1. I thought the DS2 sounded better overall. I missed having that one. That was a cool one that I had around.
Well, and it's funny because it's totally like it sounds pretty similar in the DS1 setting, but it's a totally different pedal. Like
Yeah.
Internally, it's so strange to think about.
You know, it was a sleeper hit. I want to make sure I get the name right. It's basically the SD1 version or the overdrive version of the DS2. I think it's the OS2 or OD2.
OD2.
My Japanese thing I had. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're discontinued now. They have a new version that's something kind of similar, but I got it. I saw it on Reverb because I'll browse new listings. I've since stopped this because it got really bad, where you browse new listings and you see stuff that just got posted.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can get mega deals. And I got mine for $62 shipped, which was crazy. So made in Japan, Boss pedal, $62 shipped.
Just
And
stuff.
yeah, and that one I think is super underrated. You can still get them for around $80. If you ever want to, for the listeners, if you ever want to like look at collecting stuff, some of the Japanese 80s stuff is definitely going to go up a lot in value over time. So if you can find unusual stuff like that, it's a good thing, especially if it's cheap. Just snag it, play with it, enjoy it, and hold on to it, because all this stuff that's old and discontinued, it's all going to be worth more money someday.
Yeah,
at least that's my take. Is from what I've seen so far, there's me regretting unloading things or not buying things when I was young, because and you remember, you were probably more into it than I was, like recession time. Oh man, you were getting deals.
I had no gear during that. I had like a, let me see, what guitar did I have? I had a Dean V, and like I had that crate half stack. And
yeah, I had that.
I had a Metal Planet by Rocktron. That was about it. I think I had an RV3 also. I still have my RV3, the pink label one.
Have you ever played the RV2? I haven't played one.
I don't know if they even had one.
No, they did.
Did they?
It exists. It's a Japanese. It's their first Boss Reverb. And I hear it's pretty cool because it's kind of like a weird lo-fi reverb
The only
thing.
one I know of from that far back was the DoD one, the DoD stereo reverb or
Yeah.
digital reverb or something like that. And they don't even make the chip. Like they stopped making the chip for it, but it sounded terrible. But it's super collectible because it was the very first reverb, pedal ever.
Right.
And that's a crazy one. Just thinking about back in the day, they were using some sort of Bucket Brigade delay chip as a reverb,
Right.
but I think it had like it was like a special version of a Bucket Brigade chip that could do the reverb because it had the right amount of delay lines. Whereas
So it was like a Belton, but something old and almost analog.
no, so Belton Brick is 3 PT2399 chips all set to different speeds. But no, this was actual Bucket Brigade chip. Like where there's all the capacitors leading into each other in the little chip or whatever. I'm not exactly sure how it works. I haven't gotten deep into Bucket Brigade stuff, but
yeah. Well, we could talk about one thing that the audience may or may not know is parts shortages are universal across the industry. Generally, you're able to get some things, but like, I don't know what it's going to look like here in a few months because there's stuff that's back ordered deep into next year for parts.
I think they put the date on there to make it seem like it was going to be back ordered that far. But I know that their manufacturing is like way up from where it was last year. And like when I order PCBs, they're like, oh, it's going to take 2 months to build this or whatever. And I get them in 2 weeks. So I don't know if it's just them saying it's going to be on back order because they don't know when it's going to be in, or if it's
checks
actually,
out.
yeah. So I know things like, like the FV1 chip, it's always hard to get. Like even before the part shortage, it was tough. You had to catch them at the right time when they had them. Otherwise, whoever's buying them bought all of them. So
yeah, some of my friends bought all of them. Is what I heard.
yeah, I mean, I bought quite a few, but it's like, some people were buying up thousands. Just I know
and holding them.
Earthquaker uses a lot of them too. So
yeah, oh yeah. I mean, anybody that's doing digital pedals, DSP pedals, probably if they're not using that, they're using something really similar. Is anybody using Sharp?
A lot of people are using ARM chips now.
Oh, okay, so, yeah.
I mean, that's a step beyond the FV1 chip for sure. But
right,
it's whatever you can get at the time, and I think ARM chips were a little above my pay grade when I first got into this.
Yeah, I haven't even. I've talked about DSP with people. I think I have a line on eventually doing like the PT chip chorus, and I want to do like a chorus plus delay. I'm thinking about it. I'm not super pursuing anything. Like basically, I had all these aspirations to do a lot more advanced designs.
Yeah.
But what I realized after kind of looking at the economics of it and where the company's at right now, it's better to slow down releases and stick with stuff that I can still self-produce. I was looking at having things assembled, and then I get it partially assembled, and then I finish it out, and then does that speed things up? And then at the end of the day, it was like, well, I'm going to pay 3 times as much for each pedal, and I still have to do the same amount of work. So maybe scaling that back till the company is ready for that is kind of the move right now.
Which is why I still build everything here at home. It's the same thing. It's you got to check your cost with, your profits. Because if I make pedals and, 90% of it goes to building the pedal, where I still have to put it together at home, and I'm only making 10% of the profit, I might as well make 90% of the profit and spend the 10% on R&D instead of having someone else build it for me.
Yeah. And I think that one thing I didn't, when I very first started building, which technically isn't that long, but when you start working 7 days a week building, And so if the audience doesn't know, I do build pedals full time. I have since March. So I work with my dad to
So
help
everyone
him.
in the audience knows I've been building pedals for 7 years and I still have a day job. I finally got down to one day job, but this guy here in 6 months has done something I couldn't do in 7 years by building pedals full time.
Now we can talk about, because kind of around the same time frame, you had a big spike with, because I remember when I first started getting your pedals, you were still relatively obscure. You had kind of like what I would consider a cult following of pretty dedicated fans,
Yeah, I
but it was
feel like
pretty
it's
small.
it's still pretty much that way. Like, yeah, I had a huge jump real quick when everyone saw the JHS spot, but I mean, it's still few and far between where people find it. Those people,
Right.
they're like, oh, I want that pedal. It's like they don't want to look at anything else. They just want what was on the
Yeah.
show, which is fine, but I mean, come on, look at my other stuff.
Yeah. So that I had something a little bit similar. So I came out with a pedal called the Shroot, which was basically an overdrive, and it had Dwight from The Office on the front. And it's a pretty good versatile pedal. It's based on a circuit called the Sonic Titan, which is a classic David Main DAM design, where it's almost a hybrid between like an Acapulco Gold and a Tube Screamer because of the JFET and the LM386. And it's pretty straightforward, but it sounds really good. Anyway, so I put that together, and then I ended up selling a ton of them. And that also taught me a lot about, like, because it's easy to make sales. It's hard to build pedals, and make sure they're all working and every part came in and is working. Because I ran into, I basically made all the mistakes you can make as a pedal builder when I was really super busy, and so that was a big lesson. So it was like I had, dozens and dozens and dozens of orders coming in a week. Also, the seasonality of being a pedal
Oh
builder, I
yeah,
think.
absolutely. Yeah, summer and winter, you're going to run into shortages of buyers. Like,
Right.
once October hits, it's like boom, down in the sales until about March.
Yeah.
And then same thing when summer hits, it's like June, cut off buying time. And then once September rolls around, you'll have some lift.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely a seasonal thing, which is really odd. I mean, you wouldn't think pedal buying is seasonal. But
Right.
speaking of your Shroot pedal, which is kind of a meme pedal,
Yeah.
the show still has these available. It's Fuzz is for family. You've seen the
Yeah.
meme. So just so everyone out there knows, we still have these available. The very first Professor Pedals release.
Ooh, was that an Amplify Fun badge on the side, on the face?
It's the Professor Pedals logo for, I don't know if you can see it there.
Yeah.
Oh, that's my camera. I keep trying to use
Yeah.
the camera.
I can't remember if I got the name from you or who I got it from, but Amplify Fun is a print and badge service out of Portland. It's
No,
been
I got
really
the name from
effective.
you.
Oh, I think it was Nick of Dirty Haggard Audio.
Oh yeah.
He gave me the name because I was asking. I didn't. So this is the hard part of being a builder, is that you're kind of friends with people and they do stuff, and you're like, hey, I want to do that, but I don't want to rip you off. So how do I do like adjacent to your idea?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it was kind of the same thing when I saw your badges. I was like, oh, I gotta have some badges for my pedals. Those are sick. And
Yep.
Amplify Fun, he does such a good job and helps us out so much as far as like,
Right.
if something is gonna work or not work, he will help us make it work.
That's the biggest difference. I tried
Yeah.
to tell, I got in some of my builder groups and I was like, look, there's other print services out there that are a little like, they're kind of like, it's just, that was another thing is
And the fact
when I
that he'll
first,
do one or two.
yeah,
He's not
no
making us
minimums,
do
yeah.
50.
And he yeah, no, he's that's been really helpful because that was a big jump. So when I first started, I was doing, because there was a couple things I knew right off the bat is that um, you have to keep, in order to make it a full-time business, you have to be able to build 100 pedals a month if you're going to sell them for like around $100 or less. So the only way to be able to build 100 pedals in a month is to make the build process as easy as possible. And this is when I was still working. I was working full-time and pedals full-time, which was, I don't ever want to do that again because it was
No.
brutal.
I mean, yeah,
A lot of people do it, but it's like
I
you
don't
want
know,
to stay
yeah.
up till 2 every night, or thereabouts.
Well, that's what time I get up for work, so I can't do that.
Yeah, but basically the equivalent, right? So you're basically going to put in another, after work, you'll put in another 6, 7, 8 hours of extra work on top of your daily work to get pedal stuff done.
You're making $1 an hour or something.
Yep. Well, I don't, but other people do.
Yeah.
So that was the thing. In the early days, I realized the most expensive part of the pedal building process is everything to do with the case, right? So my first pedals that I did, I had 2 different ones, and I put a sticker on it. Remember this stage where I put a sticker on it that had my branding on it, because if I got a powder coated case and put a sticker on it, that was the entire finish process. I wasn't hand painting. I knew that was a very labor and time intensive process. So if I found a way to shortcut that without compromising on the sound, because the circuit was still there, like obviously a simple circuit that sounded good. So it's like, okay, but now like the DIY community, especially during COVID era, got kind of exploded. Like there's a huge rush of DIY pedal community like really taking off, and not everybody turned it into business, but there is quite a few like small builders
everybody
doing
and
customs.
their mom wants to have a soldering iron now. Yeah.
Yep. And the point of entry to start building pedals is pretty low. Like you can get a soldering iron, a couple basic hand tools, and you can start building pedals almost immediately.
Yeah, I mean, that's why when you first started building, I was like, go get this soldering iron. It's $20. It'll last you forever.
Yeah.
And then make sure you get the right solder, and you gotta, because
that's huge.
I don't know if you've noticed, but I've bought like 10 different types of solder, and there is only one ROHS solder that I can use on my pedals because everything else is terrible. It has to be the lead-free stuff for me doing it at home, because yeah, the leaded solder works better, but it's not ROHS. So.
Oh, I don't know. Am I supposed to be certified for something? I use leaded solder. I don't know. I don't know stuff.
As long as you're not shipping international.
I do. I just don't tell
okay.
them. So I think I'm fine.
Yeah.
I haven't ran into issues yet. I'll probably have to work on that, but just don't say anything.
Kids don't do illegal things.
No, I don't know. See, that's the thing. That's the thing about.
I think a lot of people don't realize like how much has to go into certain things. Like if you ship to certain,
that's what I was about to say.
You need to know what you can ship, because they may confiscate all your stuff.
Oh yeah, this is what I was gonna say earlier that I didn't understand. So when I first started building, I was like, well, the parts cost. I mean, you can look at a handful of components in your hand, right? And you can say, okay, this costs this dollar amount. It's not very much. $3. Yeah. It's a couple dollars worth of parts realistically in most pedals.
And then your switches, your pots, your jacks, your enclosure. There's your $60.
Yeah. But that stuff is expensive. But then the thing that I didn't realize, because I was like, why are people selling fuzzes for $200? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, yeah, you can get really nice parts, but even then it's not that expensive. But what I didn't think about when I first started and was doing it really small scale is that there's so much extra cost when this is your full-time living. So not only am I having to pay for the company side of things, so I pay for all the parts and I keep, tools going and wire and all the little stuff, right? That's one whole piece, and advertising, which I spend a lot on.
Yeah, I spent
That's one hack.
zero on advertising. That's why 7 years later, I'm like
Yeah.
here and you're still up here as far as sales go.
Yeah, I had a couple.
Yeah.
There's a couple things that have been in my favor for fast growth, and I think it comes down to number one, I had audience from my YouTube. Like I was a pedal, I wasn't big, I wasn't even like that great at it, but I was enough of a pedal demo guy that I figured out how to demo pedals effectively and make videos.
Plus, people
So I
kept
had,
coming back and watching your stuff. You'd have
yeah,
shares, and like that makes a big difference.
and I was big on Facebook, which I think is probably still the biggest, has some of the biggest pedal communities, and I think it's still pretty relevant.
Which
Whereas
is
for
odd
like,
because Facebook is like not relevant to most things.
exactly, I was about to say for like
Yeah.
a band or like certain kinds of business, it's just not effective. But for pedals, it's still a big thing. So a lot of my activity. So if anybody is like wanting to see what's going on with the company, I'm usually on Facebook the most, because that's where most of the audience is. Instagram is still pretty good. There's a lot of relevance there. I think it's less of a personal, and it's less of an advertising platform. Like it's definitely there, but I feel like Facebook has the advertising side dialed in the best.
Which is odd because it's the same company. So.
It is. So like one of the things I do is I pay for ads on Facebook because they have really good targeting algorithms for, like, it's like, okay, what kind of person do you want to look at your ad? And then you go through and check all these boxes, right? And it works. Like people are like, oh man, like this is exactly what I was after or whatever. And then I also had, so what's really weird, I've used the Instagram ad creator or whatever, like ran an ad on Instagram. It didn't do anything for me, like just using the Instagram tools. But Facebook has a deal where you like click this button and it's like, oh, it'll also share to Instagram. And that works for some reason. So they don't have their stuff figured out. But yeah, when the Shroot was really popping off, because I ended up, I don't have the exact number because I changed something on my website, so it doesn't have inventory. Because I went from a, anyway, it doesn't matter. Basically, I don't know how many I sold, but I'm guessing at least I think I ended it right around 100. I don't know if it was over or under or what, but it was right about 100. I know for sure because of how
That's
many
pretty good. I
cases
mean,
I
that
had
was
printed.
that was a a pre-sale almost because you still had to build them after they were sold. And so as far as for a
Yeah.
pre-sale, that's pretty dang good. I mean,
Yeah. One thing I want
especially
to change.
for one of us
Yeah.
smaller companies, 100 pedals is a big deal no matter what. But pre-selling 100 pedals of something that you haven't finished yet is it's impressive.
Yeah, what I think I started getting them out to people and people took it more seriously. But yeah, my business model, I do want to change moving forward. So I'm basically what I call made to order. So if I post something, that means I already have the parts generally. Like not all the cases will be printed, but like I have all the onboard components stocked. So I have all the resistors, capacitors, diodes, transistors, and chips. And then I'll promote it and say, okay, it'll be done X time from now. This was probably my biggest mistake I made starting out. When April hit, between there was, I forget the time period. I think it was April 4th to May 4th. I sold like 160 pedals altogether. So that was really cool. That was like the most money I'd ever made and all this stuff. But what I didn't think about is how much work it is to build 40 working pedals in a week. Like, and I couldn't do it. And I still had orders from before that. So not only are all these orders pouring in, but I had legacy orders that were sometimes like a month old. Because I used to be really fast. Like I used to have like 1-2 week turnaround max, which is insane to think about now. But
I mean, that's not, it also depends on the depth of the build. So it's like,
right.
I mean, that's why when people started asking me about the Joy and Sorrow pedal, I was like, it might be October before I get your pedal out to you. And then it turned from October to June of next year, which is like a full year away. And I was like, that's how it's going to be because I work a day job. I can't build pedals, I can't just keep building and building. and then who knows how long it is going to be for the parts to get to me and stuff. So it's just, I mean, it's really tough to give someone a deadline and be like, hey, it's going to be a week, and now I need to build 40 of these in a week. Oh wait, I don't have capacitors.
I should look right now and see what my oldest order is. I can tell you because it's right here on my dashboard. But anyway, yeah, that was a huge mistake that I made. Yeah, I have some stuff that I need to print labels for today. But yeah, there was like a few things early on that the hardest part about running a pedal business is it's a business. So if you've never ran a business before, like it's a totally different skill set.
I mean,
so
and you're jumping into like, it's like polar dipping above your head when you're going from never knowing anything about a business to running a business, you know?
Exactly.
And there's things you don't think about, like taxes at the end of the year and all that stuff. And even if you don't have a business license, you still have to pay taxes on the income through PayPal and stuff. Like, it's not like you can just be like, oh, I made $1,000. You're like, well, 40% of that's going straight to Uncle Sam at the end of the year or whatever, you know, 20%.
Yeah. So yeah, no, it's been a huge learning curve. I'm really glad that so let's backtrack again, because this was the really interesting wake-up call. So I'm coming off of April. I'm thinking, great, this is how it's going to be forever. I'll sell, 150 pedals a month for the rest of my life. This is going to be amazing. It's, if a pedal's you can do the math, what that kind of income looks like, even with a halfway decent profit margin. But what happened was late May, it all just dropped. So I went from 30, 40 sales a week to like 5. And that was the wake up call, like, oh, this is really unstable, like way more unstable than anything I've ever done before.
Yeah.
So
and
that was,
I'll tell you what, sometimes the 5, that could be 1 a month too. So you just never know.
Not me. I'll make more than 5 a month, but
your price point's a little different than mine.
That's true.
Yeah.
But I have ways of, so like what I did this weekend, right? So I started going around my house. I have a bunch of them here, or did, but it was like, like say it's this case or whatever, like say this was a prototype. Maybe I was testing something and it was not working. And, so I run through and I turned prototypes into finished builds, basically. Like I went around my house and found all my cases that were drilled out, and I turned them into builds. And so this weekend I did that, posted them up and sold them for pretty cheap. So yeah, I mean, I'll do stuff like that. I have people that maybe have, like a guy asked me a question. He's like, hey, could you repair this? And it was like a cheaper pedal that was a micro pedal. I was like, I don't know, man. But I was like, well, and I looked over and I had a finished harness for a Fuzz Imp 2, which I don't sell anymore. And I was like, well, hey, I'll just make you one of these. And so I made them a deal that you make them an offer they can't refuse. That's the secret, if you have to. Because there's days where it's like, there's a bill that's due. That was the other thing. So I get so busy with building and with the business stuff, I don't think about,
screen's off.
Oh, oops. Hopefully it comes back.
Yeah, there we go.
My battery low message came up. I have plenty of battery, but it's like,
oh, okay. I was going to be like, oh, well.
Nope.
Yeah.
So anyway, running business, loving pedals, taste changing. I'm really into wrap pedals right now. So that's kind of, my next offering will be kind of in that vein. I showed you that prototype thing I did last night. And I've been getting really into, initially when I was into pedals, I wasn't that into mods, like having mod switches.
Yeah.
Because that was a huge thing in like early 2000s pedals. It's like, oh, you have a DS1, it has like 3 toggle switches and does all this stuff. Like half of them sound bad. So I'm not about that. But I started getting into taking some of my existing circuits and playing with mods. So I have this thing here, just going out to one of my friends today. And this
Yeah.
is that hyper modded muff. So it's, you can see, this is not an actual surprise. That's why I didn't show it on any of my social media, because I have a lot of campaigns going right now. So the other thing is like being careful about what you show people. And because if they see something, they're going to be like, oh, I want that. Or if you confuse them, like you can't confuse your audience. So I took this misprint case so you can see the text was in black and the logo was in black originally.
Yeah.
So I had like 4 of these that I had printed.
Yeah, somebody had a really good idea of making your logo orange, didn't they?
Yeah, that was a shock moment. I like the pedal builder community. We all kind of talk to each other all the time. Maybe not in depth every day, but there's always like some kind of conversation going at some point.
Yeah. Sometimes we get too busy. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man.
All right. So I think this is a good point right now to do our sound toy of the week. Paddle time, do 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 do. Paddle time, brought from me to you.
Oh yeah.
I hope
it was this
song plays. Oh, that's your sound toy of the week?
Yes.
Oh, come on, give me something that's not yours.
Where is it? You know what I will say? Here, I'll turn it around so you can see it.
Yeah.
Be careful. Is this guy. The Waza tube amp expander, I think, is the most valuable piece of equipment in my life, not because of the cost, but because of what it does. So I can record tube amp demos, full blast, Marshall Origin tube amp in the 412, but I can do it silently on headphones at 2 a.m. if I want to.
Yeah, I think that is definitely one of those pieces of gear that everyone should have. I wish they were more affordable. I would definitely have one.
I know the 2Notes thing is good, but my previous experience with 2Notes, I didn't like their software. So I never wanted to get like a captor, just because even though their software is powerful and pretty user friendly, I never felt like I felt like you had to click around and mess with it a lot to get a good cab IR. What was cool about the Waza is you just turn it on and it already had good cabinets. So it was just like, okay. Like I did some tweaking in the software once and I was set for life. So I was like, okay, that's a good cab sound.
All right. Well,
what's yours? What do you got?
I got to pull it off this board behind me. It is the F13 by Alexander.
Oh yeah, isn't it?
Flanger.
What is that? Is that like a flanger? Okay,
yeah,
I know they do a lot of like modulation and ambient pedals, which is unusual for smaller builders.
I gotta say, their stuff is all just awesome. Like, and they all do like. I feel like it's really in the same vein that I like to go down the road of, like where I want my pedal to do multiple things and it needs to do all those things pretty well and be easy to dial in. And I feel like their pedals just take it that step further, which makes it a little harder to dial in, but they just sound great,
Yeah.
And I mean, it does, dynamic echo, step, flange, and the sine wave, which is, I mean, everything I could ask for in a tiny enclosure for something that massively powerful.
Yeah,
I like
that's
the
huge.
little black hole on it too. I mean, that's cool.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
they
I
make
gotta
nice
say,
stuff.
This has to be one of their more plain looking pedals, which I like really bright, fancy, colorful things, obviously. Yeah. But this one, it really caught my attention, especially on the Andy demo.
Yeah, Andy, at least we're not watching knobs demos all the time anymore. I remember when I would talk to one of my friends and they were telling me like about, I can't remember what it was, like some weird, like they're like, oh, I want a rainbow machine, or I want a avalanche run, or I want whatever. I was like, you've been watching knobs demos, haven't you? This is back.
Who doesn't like knobs demos? Come on.
They're so good. But then you'll buy the pedal and be like, well, why doesn't it do this, that?
Well, I'll tell you what. No. Go buy a Red Panda pedal.
Yeah.
Like the Particle or the Tensor, just buy any of them, and then plug whatever you're playing into that, and you will sound like knobs. I don't care what Red Panda pedal you buy. You buy a Red Panda pedal and the other pedal, and you play into the Red Panda pedal and move that through your whatever the other pedal is, you sound just like knobs. Yeah, I remember I bought, what one was it? I think it's the Tensor, and everything I played sounded like that. It didn't matter what I played into the pedal, which was great. I mean, that's exactly what I wanted. I gotta say, I've been playing my Charlie Foxtrot by Maleko lately. I think it's by Maleko. Yeah. And I have found a new love for that pedal. Like, it's just so random and just out there that it just, like, no matter what I play into it, it's weird.
Yeah, no, that stuff is cool.
Yeah.
I need to get more into what's funny. I've talked about it before. It's like, so what happened, April was really good sales wise. I had some money. So I was like, well, I'm going to buy some pedals. So I bought all these pedals and I tried to build a board, and I was like, oh, I built this board. And I was like, man, like, I tried it all. I was like, this is cool. But the Waza has a deal where, because it's a Boss product, you click the button and it adds Boss delay and reverb, post amp, which sounds really super good. So the way it all routes it, so it's like you have the whole everything. Anyway, it sounds really good. And I was like, man, because I had like an RV5, I had a DD8, I had like some cool distortion pedals and stuff. And I was like, man, like nothing sounded better. I don't have one in here, but my one knob fuzz, like my guitar into my one knob fuzz, into my Marshall, into the Waza, sounded better than like a whole chain of crap. So I was like, man, because that's kind of my sound. Like that's kind of what I
and that's
like.
the thing, is like sometimes you just have a sound, and that was me for the longest time. I used a grunge pedal into an RB3 into a front end of a crate amp, and that was my sound. And
right,
I used it, I split it, and I'd use front end of a crate amp and guitar amp, half stack, and then the other side would go to a bass keyboard amp, and that was my sound for the longest time, and I was comfortable with it. And I think that really makes a big difference between, like, I could buy all these ambient pedals, which I have tons of modulation ambient pedals. I like to play those for me. That's not what I play though.
right,
Right. I love weird sounds, and that's fine.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
you can buy pedals that have weird sounds and play the heck out of them, but 90% of the time you're not recording with those. You're not playing live.
Right. And when I'm playing for myself at home, I just like a fuzz pedal or two into the front end of the Marshall because it's so good. The Origin just has this really interesting character to it, where the front end saturates rather than get louder. So like you hit it with this is why a lot of my pedals are loud, because I like how it sounds when you clip that front end way harder and you're running it like a boost, and it saturates more. What I didn't know, so like I did the Surprise, the new Surprise pedal is a 3-knob. It's not a muff, it's a Marshall Shred Master I tried to turn into a HM2, and my PCBs will be here like any minute. I'm very excited.
It's a chainsaw. Got it.
Yeah, kind of. But it doesn't sound like an HM2 because of how I ended up changing one of the prototypes did, and then I changed the filters again to kind of lean it out because it was too thick sounding. And part of what changed, because there's so many filter stages in that circuit, is that it kind of changed the sweep of so it works kind of like a tone knob, even though it's called sweep now, and it's more mid-range focused. But anyway, so I sent the first prototype out to a bass player, so he's plugging into this super clean front end, and those don't really clip like the way that the
bass amps just
the linear,
they
get louder.
It's the sound.
Yeah. So my friend's plugging in the Surprise, to a really clean, like pristine bass amp. And he said he couldn't get the boost control, is what I call it, because it gets really super loud. He couldn't get it above like 2 or 3, like 9 o'clock. So, because what happened was it was way too loud through that rig. And I was like, oh man. So what I started doing is bringing the gain down on the Marshall and paying more attention to, like, is this pedal already loud enough? Like, I keep adding boosts and stuff.
Well, that
It's
was
like,
like, you know, my Beast Boost, right? If you plug that into a solid state amp, you're just going to get 40 decibels more volume. Like, you're not getting gain from an amp like that, which is why I put the diode switch in there, so you can get that same kind of crunchy tone from the pedal that you would be able to get on a tube amp. Which, whereas on the tube amp, you've got your gain up, your master down, and your pre up. You know, you're getting that tube clipping, which is great when you push it. But
yeah,
you got to remember that not everybody wants to have, you know, not everybody has that nice saturated tube sound. And that way, you know, they'll plug the pedal in, it's going to sound like crap through their amp because they're just pushing a clean channel loud.
yeah. So what I started doing, so I changed that prototype, the ones, and I made a video, and the only demo video that's on the website is of the new version. And I backed it down quite a bit because what was happening with my prototype is that it really opened up when you had that boost controlled dime. So in my room, it didn't sound that much louder because it's saturated more, right? But you couldn't get that big open sound with the original prototypes with the boost crank. So it's like starting to learn, okay, it's really important that you test things on multiple rigs, multiple guitars, and make sure that there's not some weird quirk where it's hard to get a good sound from this pedal. So it's like basically every day I learned something. That's what's going on.
Yeah. Which at the same point, your pedal was designed for a certain type of sound. It's
Yeah,
you're doing a fuzz. You're designing pedals not to run through a clean amp. You're designing pedals
right.
to run through a cranked saturated amplifier, which people need to understand. Not every pedal is designed for their setup. You know, when
Yeah,
you buy a fuzz pedal, you're not buying a pedal that's designed to run on a clean amplifier most of the time. Most of the time you're
right,
buying a pedal to boost into, you know, your preamp tubes. And
right. Yeah,
which is fine. That's why, you know, a lot of videos, when you're watching tutorial or demo videos, people are using a cranked amplifier, you know, when they're like, here's my clean tone. That's why, you know, when you hear that clean tone, it's not super pristinely clean. It's not
yeah,
like a Roland JC120 clean. You know, you're using saturated tube sounds, which is right on the edge of breakup. And that's why they call it the edge of breakup, because it's the edge before your tube
right.
amplifier breaks up and gets that sweet overdrive sound. And when you run a fuzz into that, it's going to sound totally different than running a fuzz into a clean amplifier.
Yeah, I think you have probably had to explain it to people, and I explain it to people all the time. Is fuzz is going to sound the best through the scenario you're talking about.
Yeah.
Like, if you haven't liked fuzz pedals in the past, you either were like, there's just a lot of mistakes that are easy to make. But it basically comes down to that. It becomes more so than like a distortion pedal or a delay pedal or any other kind of pedal. Fuzz is extremely picky about the kind of amp you're using
And the
and
input signal.
the guitar that you're using.
Yeah.
Because like I wouldn't want to run for like a modern metal sound. I probably wouldn't want to run a stock Telly or Strat. I mean, they can sound good, but like if you think about it, you want like a thick, like kind of mid-focused humbucker into like a really tight metal sound, right? Well, with a fuzz, the single coils have so much cut and definition that it works really well with fuzz. So things like Jazz Masters and Strats and Tellys tend to be the choice for a lot of players that are fuzz forward. I mean, humbuckers can sound good too, but I don't know. It's like
I don't know.
it's
That's
kind of
actually
whatever.
that's the reason I have
That thing.
this guitar here, and that's the reason I bought the Telly that I have. I bought the Modern Player Pro, and it has the switch on it for single coil, you know, I mean, it's split coil, but I'll tell you what, it sounds more like a single coil than a humbucker.
Yeah.
And you know, it sounds great, and I use it to test a lot of stuff because I can test it with the humbucker and the single coil sound, and it works great. And then I'll test everything with this guitar as well, and I test everything with my EMG guitar as well, just to make sure, because sometimes you'll run an EMG into something and it will not sound good at all, and you have to change something.
Yeah, because it was funny when I was doing my demos, I was really focused on fuzz and I was playing EMGs. And EMG 801 can sound pretty good into quite a few fuzz pedals. Like fuzz faces, really like authentic fuzz face stuff, it's not going to sound the best.
Oh
But
man, I just got a Jimi Hendrix authentic fuzz face, you know, the replica one.
yeah,
And I freaking love that thing. It's great. And I mean, it does one thing, that's it. But
yep.
you know, it does that thing well.
Yeah, there's certain circuits. Fuzz face, I like. We both are huge fans of factories. I think you kind of started me on that path.
I mean, you know what's funny is I'm not even a huge fan of the Fuzz Factory. I just was intrigued by the circuit and I wanted to learn more about it. So I started working on it, and then I wanted to make one that wasn't PNP, you know. And so
Yeah,
I started working on an NPN silicone one, and then an NPN germanium one, and then, you know, just changing stuff just to see if how different it really is, you know,
yeah.
between the
That
original and
one,
the new one.
I think that was a good crash course for me because it's a simple circuit in terms of parts count that does a lot of really interesting things. So it's a good study for early fuzz builders if you want to learn a lot about like cleverly executed
Yeah.
fuzz.
And I
Yeah.
think it really helps people understand biasing too.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Yeah,
a big
exactly.
part of getting the fuzz to sound good is the bias. And if you misbias something, or if it's hot or cold biased, you know, you can hear the difference in the sounds. And I think that really lets new builders figure out that biasing is important.
Right.
So
And I'm starting to get an appreciation for mojo builds more. So like another thing that I didn't really understand when I was into pedals, like you know how it is when you start out, right? So you're like just as a player. So you're like, okay, you know, like $100 is the most I would ever spend on a pedal, right? And so that number, as you start getting more and more exposure to what's out there and having a few, you're like, that number starts steadily creeping up. I mean, there is a threshold like you've talked about earlier. It's like, well, you know, you have family and responsibilities. Like it doesn't make sense to spend the rent on one pedal
yeah.
every week, you know. It wouldn't work.
And I mean, that was really when I very first started building pedals. I wanted to keep my stuff as cheap as I possibly could. And
Yep.
that's what I thought about it for the longest time. And I was like, you know what? I can't keep building like this. And so I set the price point right where it is, because I need the money to keep the pedal building going, but I also need the money to, you know, pay for my time of building
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
research and R&D and stuff. And that's why, you know, my pricing I feel like is pretty good for a hand built, you know, digital modulation effect. But
Yeah.
you know, people have different opinions, different strokes for different folks.
Yeah.
And I really think that makes it more difficult is to judge how you price your pedals. Because some people, you know, I see out there, they're building, you know, fuzz face clones, and they're not testing, you know, I understand some of the people, they test every single part and they test more parts, and then they figure out what's the closest one, and then they build like 5 and everything is exactly the same tolerance and stuff because they've tested every part. Well, yeah, something like that. I mean, I understand you're going to pay $1,000 for, you know, a recreation of something original like that with everything
Yeah.
tested, and they're throwing out parts like nobody's business because it has to be perfect. But
Right.
then there's these other people, they want $1,200 for a fuzz face clone that they put together with, you know, a Radio Shack 15-watt soldering iron and in the back of their van or whatever. And you're like, well, I mean, how do you know what you're gonna,
Right. I'm starting to learn because Pat from Collector Effectors is a lot more into that scene than I am, and he likes talking about fuzz in that way, like the recreation stuff. And we talked about some of the other big players in that space, like some of the other companies that do those mojo build, as we call them, things. And
see, but you have that on one hand, but then you have the people that see those and they're
they
just
want
like,
to cash
they just
in.
want to cash in on it. And they're like,
Exactly.
I see it all the time on Reverb. It's like, oh yeah, $500 for this Baz Fuzz. And you're like,
What?
Come on.
Yeah.
It's like, it's one thing if like, and it doesn't even have artwork on it or anything. It's like Sharpied on there. And it's just like, what are these people thinking? And sometimes it's like, what is the buyer thinking?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, but as I've started to get more awareness, I mean, I probably wouldn't spend the 4-figure money on anything modern, like with an asterisk, but collector stuff is where I kind of turn like I have 2 friends with Civil Wars.
Different though. A collector's item like that's I wouldn't spend that kind of money on it personally, but I understand, you want that collector's piece, and it's rare. I mean, that's a whole nother ball game. But I'm talking about the modern builds, like somebody building brand new.
Nope.
There is the mojo builds where, whatever you said, it's somebody that puts their passion and time and effort. Like they put a lot of effort into those builds, and that's one thing. And then there's the people that just think they can cash in on it.
Yeah, I think that's what's hard for like a casual person to see about fuzz, especially if you see like a gut shot of a mojo build or something, and you look at it, you're like, there's 10 components there. Why does this pedal $1,000? Since the stuff you described, where it's like, okay, these are old parts.
Testing transistors.
And there's stuff that you can't get anymore. Like if you want that part, you have to find somebody that has one. Like I got those. I talked about it in this thing. I have a 2N1308. What's in a hoof? I'm pretty sure Earthquaker bought the world supply of 2N1308 because you cannot find those.
But it's not just that, but then like the mojo builds, they're gonna have to find 30 to 100 of those just to get one. That works in their circuit. And that's where
they got
your money's going.
A 2HFE difference because they have to be perfectly biased. Benders, this is the thing about benders especially, is the bias has to be perfect for the whole circuit or it doesn't work.
And that's where you get the difference between your germanium and silicone. It's like, with a silicone circuit, you're going to be able to bias it and you're going to be able to test it, and there's no leakage, not like there would be with a germanium circuit where you're just doing your damnedest praying that you get a good one.
I know we talked about it a little bit. I actually like vintage silicone. I like vintage silicone because you can get really weird stuff like super low HFE, low gain silicone transistors that
I have some that are like 30 HFE, and I was like, wow, what am I going to use this with?
I mean, there's only a couple circuits that I like things that are weird like that. Like this with the muff, you have to have NPN, which is a lot harder to source for germs. But if you're gonna do what I did, but it's just starting to kind of like, there was a time when I was like, it's dumb for me to spend the money on germanium transistors. Like it doesn't make sense because I wouldn't have made the money on it or whatever. Now I'm seeing, like, because I built some percolators, like I had the fuzz shrimp pedal, right? And I put that out and that was a price. And I sold a couple that didn't really catch on, but then I built some where it had a germanium transistor in the front end, or the PNP part of a harmonic percolator. And all of a sudden it sounded good. Like I didn't think that circuit sounded that great the way I had been doing it. And then I got like the right match and it was like, oh, this is a totally different thing now. And it sounded really cool. So it's like, so now I'm going back on my original thing where, you know, that's more of an overdrive circuit. And that's, I think we had the discussion. Germanium works really well in things that are kind of like overdrive boosts. And then silicone, I think, makes for better fuzz overall for consistency's sake, or hybrids.
I mean, it just depends.
It just depends on what it is.
There's also, you know, when you get a germanium cold or hot, you know, it changes the flavor. And, you know, there's stories of like the I think it's the Allman Brothers used to put their fuzz face in a refrigerator before they'd go on stage, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure it was Allman.
No, it was something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's been around for a long time because they were like, hey, the sound isn't the same.
Yeah, and it really does make a big difference on cold and hot biasing. And you know, that was kind of the point of the red fuzz back in the day was, you know, you played it, you had the tear switch, you had the bias control, and you could go hot and you could go cold and it would sound totally different.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that was a really good one. I think that was the first time I had a really good germanium based fuzz that you could really hear it and feel it. And I think that's the thing to understand for people that are wanting to get into fuzz or understand fuzz is, like, for me, my first one that I got was that modded Joyo Voodoo Octave thing that I got from you. I think was the first time I really liked it.
I have that in my drawer.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I still have yours in my drawer.
Oh, my original one, my green one. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm talking about your white one that had the cupcake one that I had after that.
We traded.
Yeah,
I took
that's
your
right.
old one to fix it and just gave you the other one. Yeah.
Yeah, that thing was killer. That was probably the first time I heard a fuzz and I was like, oh, I can really like this sound. And then it kind of went from there.
Based off the Fox Tone machine too. So.
Yep. Yeah, it's pretty. Once it's fixed, it's pretty much a straight clone as far as I know.
Yeah. And I mean, truthfully, if you aren't really listening to it, you can't tell the difference before and after for the mod on that one, which I thought was kind of odd. It was like, the circuit might be broken, but it sounds almost the same broken, which I don't see why I think they're still making them broken.
Yeah. And I think gated fuzz, I think, was the next revelation. It was like, I really liked gated fuzz.
So just on the gated fuzz subject, I know we're running pretty.
No, I have time.
But
is it supposed to be an hour? I don't care. I'm fine.
I don't care. I mean, this is going to be an odd episode anyways because it's nothing like any of the others. This is the Bumble Buzz.
Okay.
So the Jack White Bumble Buzz, the third.
Oh.
So I put the Bumble Buzz and I put my Stinger, which is like a green ringer, but it's like a fuzz in front and a fuzz behind a green ringer. So it's totally, it's totally different. And it has an internal volume knob for the Stinger part. But the Bumble Buzz is got to be the greatest Velcro fuzz I have ever played. You need to build one for yourself. It's perfect.
Did you ever have a two-knob fuzz war? I've never owned or played one. The Death by Audio one, and they had a two-knob version. That's
the old version that was like basically they like put a bunch of Baz fuzz all in a row.
Yeah, it's a big muff, and then they added. I looked at it again and I started to realize what they did because I think what it is.
The new one is that the old one, the original one, I think was just like 7 or 8 Baz fuzz in a row.
If I
remember right.
It's basically, you can look at the schematics. It's essentially, it's like what this is. So this was a big muff with 2 extra gain stages, right? Yeah. There's like a third one. So there's 7 altogether in the fuzz war. And I haven't played one, but I've heard demos and I was like, there does come a point where you just don't hear any more distortion because there's already so much gain and distortion and boost there.
And it's just so much noise.
Yeah, I can't do noise. But I was curious if you had played with one, because it's really funny. So I've been building pedals for a living, and I've built like, I don't know, 300 or 350 at this point. And I haven't built a single working Vero or proto board fuzz to date.
I will tell you what, I have had issues with proto board in the past and Vero board.
Yeah.
Like it's not for me. I'd rather mess up 20 PCBs and order them than try and build on proto board much longer. Like I've built a couple things on proto board just because, but literally like half the stuff I build on it, I screw it up, or, and you'd never know. Like when I'm building my own stuff, I like to breadboard it, like.
Yeah. So you're actually, laying it all out on it. Yeah, I haven't breadboarded anything.
Like
I put in sockets, but I haven't done.
I mean, this is a really, really awful breadboard job, but it basically just, that's easier than trying to build on proto board for me.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, it's just a difference. Like,
but yeah, I used to only build on proto board and Vero.
That was a big decision early on, because I talked to my friends and I saw stuff, and it's like, okay, the small builder who's kind of creative and interesting, they might have the extra time to sink into the extra hassle of doing it that way.
Yeah.
I knew right away that if I was going to be able to, like I said, I think it was for me that 100 pedals a month goal was my goal.
Yeah.
It's like,
and
if I'm going to build 100 pedals a month,
there's almost no way that you're going to do that with Vero.
Nope.
And you never know, like you can screw up Vero so easily.
Right.
And separate the traces from the board, and just like it's a hassle. It's one thing if I'm going to build one pedal.
Yeah. And that's what I need to do. I need to build something I want to build that's simple, and just build it to do it, just for the experience.
But the other thing about doing it on breadboard is while I'm putting the parts in, I'm drawing up the schematic on a piece of paper, so that way I can erase and follow exactly what I have on that, and I can just put it right in the computer and then make my proto board. And it's gotten so cheap to order PCBs that, back in the day, Vero was the way to go, because I didn't, how are you going to order PCBs? You're going to have to spend, big bucks on it. Now, I want to order a proto board. I paid $10 to ship it to me in less than a week from China.
Yep.
Where it's, it's not like it used to be where it was expensive.
That's the other misconception I don't think people understand about pedal companies, is that even your biggest made in US company, unless you're doing a Mojo build where you somehow manage to source like old made in America parts, pretty much any pedal that exists is made with Chinese parts and Chinese manufacturing. Like there is no other way to get the parts.
I mean, what are your choices? Where are your manufacturing choices?
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. There is no choice.
Most of these parts in America. Nobody's manufacturing them in Russia anymore. Like most of these parts are going to be made in China. I mean, it really is that way. And I don't know where the Gorva parts are made, but
I thought Canada.
Are they made there though?
Oh, not the parts. I think those are just rebrands, but the cases, I think he casts.
I know that their parts, their tolerances and everything, those are good parts, but I don't know where they're made.
I think they're probably banned Chinese stuff, Dyer stuff or whatever.
But I can say that their parts are definitely a notch up from.
That's what I've heard. Yeah, they're doing what, pots and switches and stuff now too?
No, they do tropical fish caps. They do.
They're doing all kinds of stuff.
Resistors. They do all sorts of stuff. But yeah, I mean, their stuff is top notch. I mean.
One sec. No, you're good. This is 10% warning. So no, there's a lot of options out there, but I think this I don't know. There should be more transparency, especially, and this is to go back to what I was saying before, that when you see the price on a boutique pedal, like I didn't understand why some builders were charging $200 for fuzz. Now I understand why. Because especially if you're going to have a shop space, if you're going to pay your bills, you're going to pay your taxes. Like all those things, like at the end of the day, some of those builders aren't making what you think. So it's like, you know, that money that goes into a small builder's pocket, like if you buy one of my pedals or one of your pedals, like, yes, part of it goes back into the business, but like that's money that goes straight to us that we need sometimes.
Well, I'll tell you what, on my builds, I mean, most of that money goes right back into the company. Like,
Yeah.
I don't make much off the pedals. When somebody buys a Joy and Sorrow for $350, I might pocket like $50 out of that.
Yep.
The rest of that goes right back into parts and R&D for other pedals.
Yeah,
I
sure.
really don't make much off of my pedals, and you know, those pedals are expensive to make. Just in general, all the parts in that pedal are expensive. So it really depends. Like, you know, if I was making, I'd love to make $60 fuzz pedals, but like that Fuzz is for Family pedal is set at 175, but inside that pedal, it's an 11 transistor fuzz that I have to match every one of those transistors. I have to match the transistors and I have to match the diodes in that pedal.
Yeah, because that's octave, right?
It's dual octaves.
Oh,
and so all of that stuff has to be matched, you know, and if it's not matched, I can tell. As soon as I plug that pedal in, that octave is not good. And so I match everything in that pedal so that it works right. And so $175 for a pedal that I have to hand match everything in, it's not bad. But and I'm making $0 off these pedals. I mean, this is literally was just something for the show. So if somebody wants one, get on it because they may not be available anymore.
And what people might not know is we did a pedal, or tried to. We tried to give the Angry Rot life many times.
Yeah, and it's funny, I can't get that one off the ground for the life of me. Just nobody wants it. And
I have been able to talk people into it, and I think I'm going to sell the last one that I had that you had assembled. I'm going to sell it to a friend of mine. I mean, we could pursue it again, but honestly, it's just it's too hard to talk people into it.
Though, because that's what I told you when I first released it. I was like, nobody wanted to buy it and nobody wanted it. And
it's perfect. It's a great fuzz.
And I even perfected the circuit. So now it's quieter and you have gain, you've got 3 different modes, and you know, you've got your 2 tones, you got high and low, and I just could not get that pedal off the ground. And I have boards for it.
Yeah. Oh, I'll get those boards from you sometime. Maybe I'll do another run down the road. Right now, my biggest thing is my backlog. I don't know. I can probably tell you. It's like there's a few in there. I'm starting to catch up. So what happened with the Shroot is another lesson in business. Small business mistakes is the part shortages. And just like, so I got a batch of parts, right? Of those JFETs. That's like a really important part in the build. And at first I wasn't biasing them. So I just would like plug it in and leave the trim pot set to the middle and it was fine. Well, then I had to replace the supply that I had bought up, and we got them from this new supplier and they were way out of spec. So like, all of a sudden I'm having to really carefully try and bias it, and they're just all out.
That happened to me on my 508.9s. I ordered 100 508.9s. Every single one of them is the exact same HFE, which was super odd. It's just the weirdest thing I've ever seen. But they're all about 500 HFE short of where I need them to be. So I can't use a single one of them.
What are they? What are they?
I have no idea what they are. I could not figure it out, but they're all about 581 to 583. So they're perfectly HFE, you know.
Wow. You should take advantage of that.
Yeah, but what am I going to use them in? Because
I'm trying to think of something that would actually work. Benders.
But I don't know what they are.
Yeah, I'm trying to think off the top of my head. because that's not a BC. A BC 549C is what it is. It's a totally different pinout. 3904 is quite a bit lower than that. Are they 5088s that got mislabeled?
No, because 5088's only at like 350.
Yeah, that's really weird.
Like
Because the only
between
thing I know
150
in
and
that
350.
range,
But no, it's almost
yeah,
every single one in that bag was the exact same HFE. And I was
that is
like,
so
this is the
bizarre.
weirdest, most bizarre thing I've ever seen. They're like perfectly manufactured, but I have no idea what they actually are. Because I
Yeah,
thought that I thought it was a a reputable seller, which I'm not gonna say who it is on here because
yeah.
normally I asked about it on some of the Discord stuff, and everyone was like, yeah, I thought they were reputable too, but this is the oddest thing I've ever seen. So they
And
must
I
have.
think we're going to see more of that. Like when the factory was on and off again and the employees were like struggling with COVID complications,
Yeah.
I think you're going to see some of weird stuff coming out. Like you're going to buy something and you're going to be like, what in the heck?
Well, that's why
So it's
I'm only
important to check
buying,
your
like,
stuff.
when I buy my FE1 chips, I'm only buying them through the actual dealer because there are a lot of fake FE1 chips out there.
Yeah.
And I know AliExpress was selling fake ones for a long time, and they had this clicking noise, which is known with the early FE1 chips. If you weren't using, the special grounding mat or whatever, it would tick after you built it. And the new ones I have never had an issue with, but the early ones they did have an issue for a while. But
this is the kind of stuff we deal with, right?
Yeah.
So you already have the money out for the parts. You already put time into it. So a complication. So like I was backed up, right? So I was shipping April orders like 3 weeks ago. Like it wasn't that long ago. I was still catching up from all that huge wave from April because of issues like this. And now I get it. Like companies that fall behind and stuff. It's like, man, there's so many things that can go wrong out of nowhere too.
Yeah, and you never know. Like I've had some issues with caps lately exploding.
Yeah,
which
I
is
need to check
really
on
odd.
mine. I've had pretty good luck with caps. One of my friends told me, like, keep an eye on that particular brand that I use because they can be pretty inconsistent. I thought I got the better ones, so I'll have to just check them out and make sure. But
So
yeah,
I was like, you know what? For certain parts like electrolytic caps and stuff, I'm only buying them from Mauser because I know they'll be good from there.
oh, okay.
So
Yeah, I'll have
they're
to
so
get
cheap that it really doesn't. I mean, I'm gonna pay 6 cents or 7 cents. Which,
right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's it's worth the only thing that really bugs me that I see in boutique builds that drives me up the wall is those cheap box jacks. I don't know. Yeah, some box jacks are good, but the ones
you're
that
talking
I've
about
seen,
the phone jacks.
Yeah, the phone jacks. Yeah, the big.
You're talking about
long.
These. So
yeah,
here's the thing. I hate these, but everyone is out of the solder lug switching jacks. So I have to use these in the place of my switching jack.
Switching jack. What is that for? For expression pedal stuff?
Yeah, for my expression pedal stuff.
Okay, so that's a different scenario.
So
you have to use what you have to use.
That's the switching jack. And I was able to get some PCB mount ones. So I'm gonna those ones I can
modify
get.
them.
I'm just gonna build some PCB mount ones because I can't stand those phone jacks.
Oh man, yeah. So it's stuff like that. It's like we're just all trying to work around shortages. I hear knobs is gonna look real weird here shortly. Like certain knobs are just gonna be out of stock. I mean, there'll be knobs you can put on pedals, but you don't have to switch what you're using and stuff.
Yeah, I ordered the last of all the knobs I could find. I ordered as many as I could right at the beginning of this. I ordered like 100 of each, the big ones, and then I ordered like 1,000 of the little clear ones because I know that they changed them halfway through too. So I got 500 bags of 2 different clear knobs. Yeah, and like I didn't order 2 different ones; they just sent me 2 different ones.
Oh yeah, that happened with my shroot pedal. Yeah. So the very first one I showed had those forest green, like smaller aluminum knobs.
I have a couple of those.
Those sold out. The dark green ones sold out. I bought all that they had, and they told me, "Oh, it's going to be like 3 months. I think they might have them again, but
They have them again finally. Yeah, they came in a couple weeks ago.
it was like, so I had this look for the pedal, right? And then I talked to a couple of my friends. I was like, I'm gonna have to switch to something else. And I, a nice quality aluminum knob, I felt like was fine. And so it wasn't like a big compromise or anything. And nobody said anything about it. But in my mind, I was like, I want people to get what they paid for. Like,
I mean, I think
like,
those silver ones would look fine on that pedal. The
yeah,
silver ones, the black cap.
yeah.
Yeah.
And no, there's some good ones. There's some good ones out there. I one thing I did right. So there's a lot of mistakes I made with the business side of things. One of the things I did right when sales were really crazy is I dumped a ton into R&D and getting like, so what I'll do, my product dev cycle is probably a little different than some people's. Like, it used to go kind of like this. I talk to my designer, I say, okay, I want to do this. And then they say, okay, this is what this is what the board will be or whatever. And then I'll suggest things, because then I'll get it and I'll build like 4 or 5 of them, try different things, see kind of the limitations of what the circuit can do and whatever. So, but then what I would do is I'd buy like 100 boards worth of parts for each product.
Mhm.
So in April, I bought like 7 new designs and all the parts to go with them. So I've been working off of, like, I've had to make a parts order of that stuff, of like onboard and pots and certain things. I haven't had to make an order for like 2-3 months now.
Yeah. And that's where a lot of my cost goes to from each pedal.
Oh yeah, it's
Just
huge.
restocking.
Yeah, you gotta, 100 end caps. Like, you're gonna go through a bajillion of them, or whatever your
Well,
part
see,
is
and
that
I
use a
think
lot of.
I use more 1U caps than I do 1N caps. And so I ordered
Yeah.
a ton of electrolytic ones just because, if I'm in a pinch, maybe I can use that in place of one in certain spots. But I'm almost out of like 90% of my parts right now because I can't order half of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If there's, well, I think anything that I stock, you probably already have a lot of, so you probably wouldn't need to. But
That could be.
if there's something that you need, you can just ask me. I have a pretty big supply of a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and
someday I need to design.
I've had issues lately where I've been
Yeah.
I'll be doing a huge order and I'll accidentally click on the wrong part and then forget to delete it off my order. So I have 1,000.47 UF electrolytics I will never use.
Yep, that sounds. I have a big bag that's of, I didn't pay attention or I didn't know how to order the right parts yet, kind of thing. Like, oversized
a lot. Like,
tabs
people order like the I can't pronounce it, the titanium caps instead of ordering the MLCC caps, and they'll be like, well, they're the same, right? And they're no, totally different.
I love my MLCC caps, man. It's like, I got into a debate with somebody the other day, and I respect them.
Yeah, people are always like, oh, they don't sound good. They're this. They're
not noisy. I can tell you that.
They're what?
They're not noisy. I can tell you that.
Well, it just depends. Like, I mean, I think the issues you run into are anything over 1 UF. If it has like a voltage, God, what's it called? If it has a voltage change on it, then it doesn't work correctly. And I think that's the issue people are talking about. And I think that people thought that issue went to all of the MLCC caps, but really it's just one UF and higher.
Oh, that makes sense.
On certain stuff. I mean, there's certain places, don't use that. Use a box cap. I can't stand greenies myself, but other people will use them.
Yep.
But,
everyone's got their preferences, man. And the thing is like, the classic pedals that we all celebrate were made with like what we would consider now like
whatever you
trash parts.
Yeah, trash parts.
We wouldn't use those parts today.
Like the glob top, like, I mean, with the Violet Muff, you have the glob top, everything is, nothing in there is what, you would use nowadays.
Audiophile. Yeah.
Yeah. It's literally what they had on hand. And that's why there's so many differences between each pedal. Like, oh, we didn't have enough .047 UF caps. let's just throw one UF caps in there. You know,
Yep.
it's just whatever they had on hand. Oh, does it sound okay? It sounds okay.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's real. One of my friends was saying, and I didn't when I was developing my one knob fuzz, I built like, because I was selling them really cheap. It was like 50 or 60, $55 or something for one shipped. I can't remember. It's something really outrageous. But
Also,
then,
if I remember correctly, you still owe me a monocle from way
oh,
back.
probably. I thought I sent you one. I sent you all the boards.
You sent me all the boards, but that was for something else.
Oh, that was for something else. I might have one working. I'll get you something cool. I have to look around. No, I'm always working on new stuff. So this weekend, what I try to do now is I really focus on the working on things that, like orders, like working on orders, shooting important demo videos, whatever. And then on the weekends and Friday nights, I do what I call science work. So it's like stuff that I'm doing for fun to try and see if I can turn it. Yeah. Big. This weekend, I had some big breakthroughs. One of them is, like I said, the mod switches, like with diode clipping, like adding adjustable diode clipping to some of my pedals. And I can't remember if I said this at the beginning. Tim from Bard, we've been starting to work together a little bit. He's designing me my new mod boards. I'm really excited about, because it's a really compact PCB that can drop on the back of a toggle switch. And so when I do the builds, it won't be all off-board and hacky looking. Like, it'll be nice and clean and neat. So it'll go faster and it'll look cleaner. But then I have like these mods that I can add to almost anything that I have an existing board for. So my rat board is going to be developed into a new product that should be really cool. That'll come out sometime in the next couple months. I think that'll be the next big push. So I'm really excited about what I pulled out of it.
Yeah. I mean, and so in conclusion here, I think this is a good place for us to stop, because we're almost we're almost an hour over, I think.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, it was good talking to you for this, and this is definitely way off the rails from what our regular show is, I'm sure.
I'll have to check it out.
I don't know how they're going to edit this or anything, because I'm not normally the one hosting this. Like I said, we're missing Lowell and we're missing Vince, which was unexpected to get this episode all together by me, who is not tech savvy at all when it comes to doing this kind of stuff. And I just have one last thing to say to everybody out there who is watching, or I'm sorry. And also, stay cool, cheese bags.